Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala anbiya wal mursalin. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammadin fatil lima khuliq wal khatil lima sabaq. Nasrul haq bihaq wa hadila siratal mustaqim wa ala alihi aqdaril azim. Alhamdulillah, praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for another night with Shaykh Abdul Aziz Fredericks on the 40 principles of the Deen from Ihya Ulumuddin Imam Ghazali. And tonight, Shaykh will be addressing on the topic patient. Right, so mashallah, we have some difficulty or technical tonight. That's why it was delayed. Somehow it's connected to the topic that she is teaching, patient. Right, so without further ado, I'd like to invite Abdul Aziz to start the class now, inshallah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. Okay, الحمد لله. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق والخاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله وصحبه حق قدره ومقداره العظيم.
Are they come? Do you need help with something?
Nothing from you. That is helping you with something.
عفوا منكم. Okay, alhamdulillah, jazakumullah khair. Allahumma salli wa sallam wa barak alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Today's topic is on sabr, on steadfastness or patience. As a number of translations. But now I'm going to use the word patience. And I was in two minds whether we should try and address the topic of patience and thankfulness. And the reason why that is, there's 4 points I wanted to make related to this question of whether it should be patience and thankfulness together. First of all, there's a very important hadith where the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Al-iman nisfan." Faith is of two halves. Nisfa fi sabr wa nisfa fi shukr. Half is in patience and half is in gratitude or thankfulness. Half is in patience and half is thankfulness. So for that reason, inshallah, the two are very, very closely connected. The second, alhamdulillah, we're in the month of patience, in the month of sabr, in the month of which is described by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as the month of sabr. And alhamdulillah, as we come towards the end, many of us are starting to think about Eid, and Eid is connected to gratefulness or thankfulness or being thankful. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان من شهد منكم الشهر فليصم. Whoever witnesses this month of Ramadan should fast. ومن كان مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخرى. Whoever isn't able to fast should postpone it and do it on different days, or whoever is sick or traveling, فعدة من أيام أخرى. يريد الله بكم اليسر لا يريد بكم العسر. He wants you to have ease, doesn't want you to have difficulty. ولتكبر الله على ما هداكم ولعلكم تشكرون. It says لتكمل العدة ولتكمل العدة, so that you can complete this month of Ramadan, so you can complete the month, and ولتكمل العدة ولتكبر الله على ما هداكم, and so that when on that day, on the month is completed, you say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, لِتُكَبِّرُوا اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ, and so that you can show thankfulness. So here we're in the month of Shukr, we're in the month of Sabr, and the month of Sabr, the month of steadfastness, of patience, ends with the day of gratefulness, of thankfulness. So the two are directly connected, of patience and thankfulness. And the third point that I wanted to reflect on regarding whether these two, how close these two principles are, is that a brother raised the question following some of the discussions that we had in the other classes, describing how a lot of people are facing challenges, and he was referring to the kind of questions that were being posed during the classes, and it was quite clear that a lot of people were facing tremendous challenges in their lives, and alhamdulillah, it seems that many of them are showing this very great quality of sabr, of patience, of steadfastness, of forbearance during these difficult times. However, he put the question there, what about people that are not facing tribulations, not facing difficulties? Are they in effect disadvantaged? Are they less worthy because they're not facing tribulations? Or how should they come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And the answer was the answer that I tried to give him was that some people come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the state of steadfastness and patience during tribulations, and others come in the state of thankfulness and gratitude. For some come in state of difficulty and patience, and others come in the state in the station, in the way, of the approach of thankfulness. And that's why Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "At-ta'im ash-shakir bimanzilat as-sa'im as-sa'ib 'inda Allah." He says the person that eats and is grateful, the person that eats and is thankful, it is in a good state and is thankful, is the same state as the person who is fasting and is patient and steadfast in that. So the two are directly connected. And in other words, if you're not in a state of difficulty and therefore patient, then you must be in a state of ease and therefore showing thankfulness. So the two are directly connected to the extent that in Ihya Ulumuddin, the chapter, the 32nd book of Ihya Ulumuddin, is called the book of patience and the book of patience and thankfulness. And here's the English translation of the book. So you see that in the English translation, in the full version of Ihya Ulumuddin, he puts the two together. However, in the book that we're studying, the abridged version, this two principles of patience and thankfulness are tackled separately. So for that reason and a number of other reasons, I'm going to try and tackle them separately. Partly because the time is short and they're both very, very large topics. So let's begin with going straight into the text. First of all, it begins with a number of verses where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, first of all, he says, "Wasbiru inna Allah ma'as sabirin," and show patience, be patient. Inna Allah ma'a, indeed Allah is with. And this withness is not a physical withness, of course, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not a physical entity. It's not it doesn't have a physical body. But what it means is this withness in closeness and love and kindness and care and knowledge and mercy. All of these attributes are with us. So his withness is there when you have steadfastness and patience. Wasbiru inna Allah ma'as sabirin. He also says, related to this month of Ramadan, this month of patience, this month of fasting, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes it, إِنَّمَا يُوَفَّى الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرُهُمْ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ, that indeed the patient are given their reward without account. And we understand this from what we said in the very first class on this book, that the fast that we're going through at the moment is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam relates from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where Allah says, "As-sawmu li," that fasting is mine. Wa ana ajzi bihi, that this fast is specifically for me, and I will reward it individually. I will reward it in effect personally. This is something which is a special relationship with the act of fasting. And it doesn't mention you'll get this palace, or you get this reward, or you get this river, or you get this, or you get that. He just says you'll get rewarded, and we await whatever special reward he gives. And that's why he says, "Innama yuwaffa sabirun أجرهم, their ajr, their reward, بغير حساب, will be uncounted, will be without a count. So it's so great that it will not be measurable. And then the final verse that I'd like to refer to that he mentions a number of them. And there's one verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون. He says, and they, meaning the patient ones, they will have the prayers of Allah descending upon them and His mercy. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُهْتَدُونَ. And they indeed are the ones who are guided. So here he links the concept of steadfastness, of patience, of being patient under difficult times. He links this with three qualities. The prayer of descending upon him, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends blessings upon him, He descends mercy upon him, and they will be the guided ones. In other words, as a result of the sabr, of the steadfastness, of the patience, you will receive guidance. And that's quite clear from the verse we began with, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, شَهْرُ رَمَضَانَ الَّذِي أُنزِلَ فِيهِ الْقُرْآنِ. This month is a month in which the Quran was revealed, هُدًى لِلنَّاسِ, as a guidance for people. So the guidance is connected directly to patience. So patience is the key to all of these great blessings, including guidance. So these are some of the Quranic verses, and as I just mentioned, that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "As-sabr nisful iman." That this patience is half of religion, half of this faith is in patience. And in another narration of the same hadith, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was asked, "What is faith? What is this thing called faith?" And he answered, "As-sabr was samaha." He says this is patience, and samaha is when you forgive people. So somebody does something wrong to you, hurts you, samaha, you just forgive them. You overlook other people's faults. So this faith, this quality of faith, is sabr and samaha. And why is the connection to the Quran so strong here? Is because the Quran is what we call a ma'daba. It's a feast of qualities. And if you truly feast on these qualities, if you truly relate to these qualities, then as a result of it, you will manifest these in the way that you behave. So you show sabr by fasting and by reading Quran, and as a result of this, when Eid comes and the months come after the fasting is over, then the fruits of this fast will be shown in the way that you behave towards people, which is why in this hadith he describes that the iman, faith, is this steadfastness, this patience, this holding fast, and then as a result, samaha. The other half is being kind to people, is overlooking their fault, overlooking the way that they treat you. This is what's meant, and that's why sabr, this patience, is described in another hadith as kanzun min kunuz al-jannah, is a treasure from the treasures of the garden. It's a treasure from the treasures of the garden. In other words, all of the other things in the garden, in the hereafter, in the heaven, you'll find that if you look, their roots are with this quality of patience. If you have patience, you'll find it will lead you to all the other things, as we just mentioned previously in the other ayat. أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون. They are the people that are guided, and through their guidance, through the guidance Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants them, they will find all of the other qualities. So this is some of the qualities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has associated or described, linked, attributed to sabr, to steadfastness, to patience. But what exactly is patience? It's a word that we use, but what does it mean in this context of the Quran and Sunnah? And the definition that Imam Ghazali uses in his two texts that we just referred to now, he says, ثابت باعث الدين ثابت باعث الدين في مقابلة باعث الهوى. He says the firmness of religious motivation in the face of desire's motivation. So there's two qualities here. One is your internal desire, what you want, and then there is the motivation of the religion, or that which has been set by the deen. And the word deen is deen means transaction, and some people have translated the word as deen as, rather than translate it as religion, they've actually translated it as the life transaction. I think that's a bit clumsy, and it's a bit far from what people would understand, but it's an accurate description of what the deen is. The deen is a relationship between the servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God's servant, and God himself, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. So what we have here is this relationship, and placing this relationship above the relationship you have with your own lower self. So you want this, and that relationship you with yourself pushes you in one direction, but your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God Almighty, is something which pulls you into a higher state. And when that pull, when that what he says, ad-din, the pull of the transaction with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is greater and firmer than the pull that you have towards what you want to do, then this means you have sabr. So in other words, when you want to eat, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm dehydrated. What I really want is a nice cup of Sri Lankan tea. But I can't. Why can't I? Because I've still got another 7 hours to fast. And then I can have my cup of tea. So what I'm doing is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us to fast from dawn until dusk. So we have to fast for this period, no drinking, no eating. And therefore, this relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and this ba'ith ad-din, this desire or religious motivation overwhelms my desire for my cup of tea. And therefore, I'm being patient, I'm being steadfast in my desire, in my over my desires. So this is what's meant by this is the definition of sabr, of the definition of patience. And here, how does that relate to what we were talking about last week, or in previous weeks, about about tribulations, about dealing with abuse, about dealing with the dunya, dealing with tribulations within our lives? It's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen a situation for you. And I give an example of a sister who alhamdulillah is a very righteous person and has been a great teacher, young lady. But recently she became very ill, and as she went into i'tikaf a couple of days ago, she seemed to be quite sad that she wasn't fasting. But alhamdulillah, I just reminded her and reminded myself that sometimes Allah puts somebody in a position of difficulty, and by that difficulty gets greater reward. So it's perhaps the fact that she's not fasting may be greater this year than all of those many fasts that she did when she was younger, when she was able, because this choice that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made has been, it's his choice. She is ill by his choice, and her responsibility to this is to allow her desire to her will, what she wants, which is to fast, to do this, to do all that, has to accept, well, actually Allah's decided something different. And in these difficult times of sickness, she can then say, actually, I'm okay with this. My relationship with my Lord is greater than my anger about my sickness, or my disappointment in my sickness, or whatever emotion, internal individual emotions you have, which are driven by muqabalat al-ba'ith al-hawa, by your internal desires. So in the same way that my internal desire might be for very base things like a cup of tea, it might also be where I would like things to happen the way I want them to happen. I would like this to be, I would like to go to the mosque, but I can't. Why can't I? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent a virus which has affected the whole world, and people in Singapore have been unable to go to the mosque, and people in Glasgow are unable to go to the mosque. We want to, but what we do is we place Allah's our religious duty and our relationship with Allah higher than our own desires, and that's what's meant by sabr. So in the time of difficulty, we are steadfast and patient because Allah has chosen these difficulties for us, and he will take us out of them, whatever those difficulties are. In the case of my thirst, 9:30 tonight, inshallah, there'll be tea. In the case of the sister's health, inshallah, she will get better. And if she doesn't get better, Allah will reward her so highly from this that she will see it all in the next world. As for the mosques, inshallah, when the virus is dealt with and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lifts this difficulty from the whole world, inshallah, we'll all go back to the mosque. So the time will come. And so patience is waiting is allowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan to work without becoming angry about it. And that's why this relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is unique to humankind. There are different types of creatures, and we could say there's a hierarchy of creatures related to their relationship with themselves and their relationship with their Lord. And the highest of these are the angels. And the angels do not show sabr, they don't show patience. Why? Because they were created to worship God and to obey him in whatever he tells them to do. So they don't question, they don't have any hawa, they don't have a desire to drink tea, they don't have a desire to fast or to go to the mosque. They don't have any desires at all. They just do what they're told. And they are completely obedient as a servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is one level. And then there is another level which is low, which is the level of the animals. The animals don't have the ability to recognize the obedience. They're not obedient or disobedient. They just do what they instinctively, what their hawa or their desires and needs drive them to. So in the same way that an animal may kill another animal, he doesn't do it because it's worship or it's not worship. He just does it because that's what he needs to do. In the same way that animals are driven by this lower level. Now the human being has both these qualities, has these angelic qualities, this ability to be completely obedient to his or her creator, to recognize the creator, and then as a result of this recognition to just be in tune with what the creator wants of us. But to get to that level, they have to move from that base level, because when a child is born, when the baby is born, the baby immediately wants food, turns his eyes to look for his mother or her mother, and then immediately opens his or her mouth. So this base desire, this base instinct, this base need is what a child has, a baby has. But as the child grows, the child can then grow into a state where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives guidance, gives tests, gives tribulations, gives refinement, gives understanding, gives knowledge, gives all of these qualities. And as a result of these, they develop the qualities, become a muru of being a full human being. And so this concept of patience, of sabr, is unique to this category of creation. Sabr isn't for the animals. Sabr isn't for the angels. Sabr, patience, is for humankind. And that's why humankind have the potential to rise above the angels, because they choose to show patience, they choose to be obedient, or they can fall lower than the animals because they've chosen to be animalistic, to be beastly, to be low. And that's why patience is such an important element of faith, because this is the one quality, one of the main qualities for lifting you so high or bringing you so low, which is why the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned, as I mentioned previously, that this patience is half of faith. So that's what patience is, and that's what patience, the quality of patience can affect you. Now, as we've just mentioned a few minutes ago, we said that it's to do with, I mentioned two types of patience. One is patience in obedience to God's acts, desired acts, or the acts that he wants you to do. He says pray, we pray. He says fast, we fast. He says go for Hajj, we go for Hajj. He says be kind to your parents, we're kind to our parents. He says give charity, we give charity. These are all al-a'mal as-salihah. These are all the good, righteous actions. So this is one element of sabr that I mentioned. The other is when there's difficulties and you don't actually do anything. You just patiently wait until the time has come, as unfolded, for us to go back to the mosque, for us to be lifted out of these difficulties. And the two are very, very important. Now, there's a letter that was written by Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab to Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, radiallahu anhu. And in this letter, he explains very beautifully these two types of sabr, these two types of patience. And I'll read the letter to you, or read from the letter. He says, "Wa alayka bis sabr." You should show patience. Wa'lam, and you should know, anna sabr sabran, that this patience is of two types. There's two types of patience. Ahaduhuma afdal min al-akhir, and one of them is greater than the other. As-sabr fil musibat fu musibat hasan. This sabr during tribulations is good. And this relates to the question that was put to me a few days ago, as I mentioned earlier, that what if you're not in that state where you're having difficulties? Does this mean that you're not able to approach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the same way that the people that face difficulty? And I said, no, it's a different approach. Here he's describing those people that approach through sabr. They have this type. Well, Hasan, it's good. And the second is for afdal minhu, but even better than that is sabr amma haram Allah ta'ala, is when you're patient or you're steadfast about what Allah has forbidden. Now, وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ الصَّبْرَ مِلَاكَ الْإِيمَانِ, and know that sabr is the treasure of this faith. وَذَلِكَ بِأَنَّ التَّقْوَى أَفْضَلُ مِنَ الْبِرِّ. That's because the greatest part of righteousness is taqwa, is being aware, holding back from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want you to do. وَالتَّقْوَى بِالصَّبْرِ, and taqwa comes around, this righteousness comes around because of steadfastness. Right, let's rewind a little bit and go through this a little bit at a time. So let's go back to one of the questions that was put in the very first session about addiction. About the specific question was about porn addiction, and how can fasting, how can they deal with this addiction during the month of Ramadan? And my answer roughly was something like, actually the fast should help you with porn addiction or any kind of addiction. And I gave a particular example of a sister that I knew who went through many detox types of programs, different therapy. But actually one of the turning points in her life was when she managed to fast, and she realized that she had the ability to overcome her lower desires. And from that point on, she started to move much quicker with her dealing with her own addiction, and eventually, alhamdulillah, left it. And this is true of many people that I know, that Ramadan was a means by which they managed to get out of this. And that's why when we look at the very first verse that we referred to when we talked about the month of fasting, we said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykum as-siyam, O you who believe, prescribed for you is fasting, la'alakum tattaqun, so that you could learn taqwa. Taqwa is to hold back. So the answer is to the question of the person with porn addiction, or the person with drug addiction, or the person with anger management issues. Is that fasting should lead you towards having greater taqwa. If you've done it properly and you've tried to control your lower desires, then it will strengthen you. And as a result of this, that sabr, the first type of sabr, which is overcoming these difficulties, will lead to a sabr, which is steadfastness in righteousness. So after the month of Ramadan is over, what did we say? لِتُكْمِلَ الْعِدَّةِ, so that you complete the month. وَلِتُكَبِّرُ اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ, and so that at the end of it, you say, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. We don't just say this just because it's got a nice tune. We say this because Allah is greater. He took us from point A and He took us to point B. And as a point of getting to point B, the end of the month, now our responsibility is to move forward in a better way. That's why there's a poem where it said, a famous poem where it said, لَيْسَ الْعِيدْ لِمَنْ لَبِسَ الْجَدِيدِ وَإِنَّمَا الْعِيدْ لِمَنْ طَاعَتَهُ تَزِيدُ. He says Eid isn't for the person who wears nice new clothes. The Eid is for the one who has increased in acts of obedience. In other words, if through this month you've got better than you were at the beginning, and the person who was completely porn addicted at the beginning was needing to watch porn 3 or 4 times a day, at the end of the month he doesn't need to watch it 3 or 4 times a day, but he slips every once in a while and needs it once in every fortnight, or then he's moved forward with his life, and the fast has helped him move forward, and therefore he deserves to say this is Eid. And if he gets to that point, what does he say? Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater, Allah is greater. And that's why moving forward from that point, the next day should be Eid. Why should it? Because you get better. And the next day should be Eid because he's getting better. And the next day should be Eid because he's getting better. And so every time he gets better and better, he comes in a better state. So when the questioner put to me earlier in the week, facing tribulations, actually then that person is in a better state, according to what Umar ibn Khattab said in his letter. Why? Because he's now coming to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of a state of patience and in a state of thankfulness that Allah has taken him out of the tribulations. And I'm sure that nobody gets to that point of being patient and thankful and worshipping in the way of taqwa with this real righteousness and real steadfastness unless they came through tribulations. Because everybody that comes through tribulations comes through it, if they come through it successfully, will get to that point where inshallah they receive the true level of the true guidance. So that's the purpose of the fast. That's the purpose of patience. Now, patience is of three levels. There is the highest level where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken that person and he's overwhelmed. That person is able to subdue his desires completely and is completely steadfast. That they've got to that point where they've overwhelmed. They don't even have desires. Like, they don't even think about tea. They don't even think about haram. They don't have those desires in it because they've completely overwhelmed them, and the only thing that they want is what Allah wants. This is a level of the higher levels, and this relates to one of the other sections that we talked about, which is contentment with what Allah wants. This is one level, and this is the very, very highest level. Okay, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says of that level, Ya ayyuha an-nafs, it says to that person, Ya ayyatuha an-nafs al-mutma'inna, irja'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyah. He says, O restful soul, O restful person, when that person will come to the point where they're so pleased in their life, they spend their life in contentment, they will die in that state of contentment, that they're happy, they don't want anything from life. They've got through their life and they're completely content, and then Allah will send an angel and take their soul to God Almighty. That person will pass to the mercy of Allah, and the angel will say, Ya ayyatuha an-nafs al-mutma'inna, irja'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyah. Return now to your Lord in that state of contentment. This is the highest level. Let's talk about the lowest level, and then we'll come to the middle one, which is really what we should be thinking about. The lowest level, we'll ask Allah to protect us from this, is where let me read directly from the text which I mentioned, which is the one we were looking at. The lowest level is that desire's call is strong. The contention of religious motivation falls off, desire overcomes, and the heart surrenders to Satan's forces. This is the quality of those of whom it is said, وَلَكِنْ حَقَّ الْقَوْلَ مِنِّي لَأَمْلَأَنَّ جَهَنَّمَ مِنَ الْجِنَّةِ وَالنَّاسِ أَجْمَعِينَ. But my statement will be realized. I will fill hell with jinn and people together. So this person is where his desires or her desires have completely overwhelmed them, and that there is no religious motivation left. There is no connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all. And there are two signs of this. One, or two types. One is where the person says, I want to repent, I want to turn back to Allah, I want to make tawbah, I want to go back to Allah, but I just can't. It's too difficult for me. Now this person falls into one of the biggest sins, so to speak, one of the biggest mistakes, which is complete despair. Now when somebody despairs like this, this is greater than all of the things that I just mentioned, addictions, porn addiction and drug addiction. Why? Because despair is, the meaning of despair is where you give up, where you no longer think that you can get out of this state, and you just give up and say, well, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it. I can't, I'm giving in complete. This is an element of the nafs, which is worse than the nafs, the desires that we were describing earlier, because here, the desire now is just to follow whatever they want rather than. And the second is where they refuse to recognize that they've made a mistake. And this is more dangerous. This is more dangerous where they say, well, God, or they reckon, oh, God loves me anyway. It's all right. I don't need to make repentance. I don't need to turn back to him. I don't need to do what he wants because he's going to love me anyway. Or they use the religion to justify what they've done. And it's interesting. This one is probably worse than the one that's in despair. And I'll give you an example of how that's come to me from three different directions, from three different people at the same time this week. Ajib, that's why it's coming to my mind, is that somebody These are three different cases, completely unrelated, where the husband was abusive to their wife, and they'd gone through this abusive relation. Three totally different situations, three totally different people, three totally different cities, but almost the same story. They were abusive to their wife throughout and then at one point they became so angry that they just swore the divorce. They swore the divorce 3 times. Each one has done the same thing in different places and different times. And then they divorced, and it was over. And in one case, they did this over and over again for weeks, months. And in one case, the person recorded the divorce as proof that he's divorced her. And he says, "Here's proof that I've divorced you, and that you are." And then he sent it to her. And each of the 3 cases, the person then regretted it afterwards. And what did they do? Instead of turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, asking him to forgive and recognizing that they did something wrong, they said, that divorce didn't count. And then they asked the Imams, and the Imams, each one of the 3 cases, they asked different Imams in their different cities, and each one says, no, the divorce is valid and that you can't go back to your wife. And somehow they come to me and expect me to come up with a different answer. I'm not going to come up with a different answer. The law is the law. The law says you've divorced your wife irrevocably in each of these 3 cases, and you cannot go back to them. And they say, but I want to. So I said it in one of these cases. I actually said to the girl, because she was confused. I says, look, if you want to sleep with him, sleep with him, but don't pretend that it's Islamically correct. Don't have a pretend marriage or just go back to him and say we're still married, because you're not. Because what you're doing, your hawa, your desire here, your lower desire is actually worse when you try to wrap it up in Islamic, say, yeah, Islamically it's correct. It's not Islamically correct. So these are the 2 types. One is where you give up completely, and the other is where you refuse to accept that Allah's law or Allah's plan or Allah's decree upon you is correct, and you somehow think, well, now I can do something different to him. I can do, it's all right, I can just do whatever I want. And these are the 2 most dangerous elements of this low level of complete lack of sabr. So we have that complete sabr where the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala completely overpowers your desire, and then the bottom level is where the power of your own desire overwhelms your religiosity or your ability to connect with the deen, with the transaction with your Lord. And then there's the middle group, and this is the middle area, and this is the one that's most important, because this is where most of us are. Alhamdulillah, most of us are not at that very base level where we're completely overwhelmed by our desires, but we're not at that level where we have, we've completely submitting to Allah's will and Allah's plan, and His will is greater than ours in every respect. So what is this? How do we deal with this level? So let me read again from the text. The intermediate level, that's the level we're in, is that a person does avoid making war upon a desire. Actually, I'm not sure this is a correct term. La yaftir al-maharaba. What this actually means is la yaftir al-maharaba means that he doesn't go out full out on fighting. He fights his own desires, but not full on. So alhamdulillah, in this month of Ramadan, it's a time where we're really able to fight full on. How do we take this forward next month and the month after, the rest of the year? That's where we fall into this lack of patience, where it's not as strong as it is now. So this is the second category, where la yaftar al maharaba, that they fight but not full on, that somehow they're in battle with their own lower self, but sometimes there's ups and sometimes there's downs. Sometimes they just kind of give in, and sometimes they fight fully. And that's where most of us are. Sometimes he has the upper hand, and sometimes he takes a loss. This person is from among those who struggle, mixing righteous actions with others that are bad. Its sign is that a person abandons those desires that are weak, yet is unable to refrain from what is stronger. So this now describes, if you can use this to measure where you are. So if you are in this battle state, but not that full-on battle, but we are battle ready, so to speak, and occasionally going out to beat our own nafs, is that we take on the little things, but we don't take on the big things. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because at the beginning of the journey, it's better to take on these small things. And as I said, in response to the question about the porn addiction, it's better to stop and try and measure the time that it takes between one slip and the next slip. And if we can make the slips, the gaps between the slips longer, and the time that you slip shorter, then you're starting to win this battle. Now that's a sign that you are in this middle category. And inshallah, with time, we will reach that higher category with sabr, by keep going at it. And as I gave you the example of that sister, alhamdulillah, she overcame her drug addiction, and that they're all able to, that many of these cases that I quoted, alhamdulillah, have risen to very, very high levels of spiritual relationship with their Lord. But they started off at very difficult circumstances. So this person is from among those who struggle, mixing at times he may overcome, but not at others. At all times he is deeply remorseful. At times he is deeply remorseful about his inability, and acts aggressively in order to strive and oppose himself. So this feeling of remorse is really, really the key. That if after slipping up, you turn and you think, "Oh my God, did I do that?" then this is a sign that you're in this category, and inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, as a result, make you want to fight harder. Allah will turn to those people. This is the greatest struggle. This is what he describes as jihad al-akbar. The greatest struggle is this one, because that battle that we're talking about, that Imam al-Ghazali is describing, is really the greater struggle, because this is much more difficult than getting into fights and that physical outward struggle. And I gave you the example of the days when I was much younger, and our Imam used to in our mosque used to face a lot of physical and abuse from the local people, and so he wouldn't leave the mosque until I came. And alhamdulillah, I was a young 14-year-old boy. I used to leave the mosque with him, and I wasn't scared of any of these skinheads. It was not a problem for me. But that wasn't half as difficult, fighting skinheads, as it was fighting my inner urges and inner desires and my own bad things that were going inside me. So that's what's related by the two jihad, so to speak, the outer struggle and the inner struggle. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those people who reach that level. Now finally, I want to move on to, because a lot of the discussion there was about the sabr in the times of difficulty and overcoming our lower self. But actually, there's in every state we need to show sabr, even when we're in a good state. And among the companions said, "Balina bi fitnat ad-dharra'i was-sabr وصبرنا عليه وبلينا بفتنة السراء فلم نصبر." He says that the companions used to say, we were tested with the trial of hardship and we were patient, and we were tested with the trial of ease and we were not patient. What this means is, in the difficult times when they were in Mecca and they were hungry and beaten and attacked, and they tied stones to their stomach, they were patient. They showed patience. And then the companion says that after the Prophet ﷺ passed, and they were given such wealth that Constantinople was in their sights, that the Persia was about to fall. All of these, they had so much wealth that then the companions, some of the early companions, said that we were able to show patience in those days, but we don't show real patience now. Means that sabr, this quality of patience, was then, and the real test was when Allah gives you everything that you can possibly have. Are you still patient? Are you still steady? Do you still have the definition of sabr? Is where Allah's your religious what did we say? The religious motivation is firm. There's the firmness of religious motivation in the face of desires motivation. Is that sabr? Have we still got that sabr even in the time of difficult, in the time of ease? And that's why the Sayyidina Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, he said that the first bid'ah, the first innovation was obesity. The first bid'ah was obesity, meaning that when we became so wealthy that we just ate and we ate. And there was a time where the Prophet ﷺ described this time. He said, there will come a time where we will be so wealthy that we will eat in the morning and we will eat in the night from different plates, and we will wear clothes in the morning and we will he says we will use plates in the morning and plates in the evening, the tabak, the plates that you eat off. And the companion said, oh, in those days will they eat twice? And he says, in those days will we eat twice a day? Like in complete astonishment that there was a possibility that they would eat twice. And the Prophet ﷺ describes, he says, not only will they eat twice, they will eat their full twice a day. How are we? In the times where we live, we eat our fill 3 times a day. This is what, and the Prophet ﷺ, and they couldn't understand that these days would come. And when those people looked after the Prophet ﷺ had passed away, and they looked around them and they saw people wearing clothes that they wore in the morning, and then they changed their clothes in the afternoon, and they would have different sets of clothes for different situations. They looked and they said the Prophet ﷺ indeed spoke the truth. And this sabr, and again sabr, the patience, what does it mean? The firmness of religious motivation in the face of desires motivation. So they are not able to show sabr, and we are not able to show sabr in the time of wealth and of ease. This is one of the big challenges, and that's why the Prophet, some of the companions says, "Yasbir ala al-bala kullu mu'min." Believers are those who have sabr, patience in difficult times. وَلَا يَصْبِرْ عَلَى الْعَافِيَةِ. But the people that show sabr in a state of afiyah, when they're in a state of well-being, إِلَّا الصَّدِيقِ, except the one is really truthful. That's the real sign of truthfulness. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us that ability to be thankful and grateful in the times where we are in a state of ease, as many of us at the moment. Alhamdulillah, somebody was asking how our situation is in our house here, because a lot of people know that my wife has got a very serious lung condition, and in the times of COVID-19 that she's perhaps one of the most vulnerable people. And alhamdulillah, a lot of people have sent very kind messages asking, and my answer is the same. Alhamdulillah, we have everything that we need. We don't leave the house, it's true, there's 3 of us, but we're self-contained. And we're also blessed by people phoning up every once in a while. We're in the shops, what do you need? Alhamdulillah, we're in a total place of ease, despite all the difficulties that the world is facing. And so we ask Allah to make us of those shakirin, of those grateful ones. Why? And here I'll finish with a few notes about shukr, about gratitude, to lead us into this final topic. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ, that if you say thank you, if you show gratitude, if you show thankfulness, Allah will increase you. So there is a great reward in being thankful, and the reward for thankfulness is more thankfulness. And that's what we ask Allah to give us. And Allah says, وَاشْكُرُوا لِي وَلَا تَكْفُرُونَ, thank me and do not be ungrateful. And I'll finish with one last story, which is where the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he got out of bed, he left his wife Sayyidatuna Aisha radiallahu anha asleep, and he got up and he prayed all through the night. The rest of the night he spent in prayer. His feet were swollen, his eyes were red with tears, and Sayyidatuna Aisha he said in one narration, why are you tiring yourself? And in another narration he says, Ma yabkika ya Rasulullah, why are you crying? Why do you go through this crying? Allah has forgiven everything that you've done and everything that you haven't done. And then the Prophet ﷺ answered, Ala akuna abdan shakura, should I not be a grateful, a thankful servant? So the ultimate source, the ultimate root, ultimate outcome of being steadfast and patient is being in a state of ease, inshallah, which we will be in. And when we show thankful for that, it will be higher than even when we were showing patience. This is the month of patience, and inshallah, when the day of Eid comes, inshallah, we will show great joy and great thankfulness, but it will take us forward in the state of wanting to continue to show patience, which is the firmness of religious motivation in the face of desires motivation, so that we don't fall back and slip up on Eid day or moving forward from that. We ask Allah to grant us this complete tawfiq, complete increase, and make us of the righteous ones, and give us al-afwa and tawfiq, inshallah. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sallam. With that, inshallah, I'll hand back to Khalid to see if there are any questions. Tawfiq, complete increase, and make us of the righteous ones, and give us al-afwa and tawfiq, inshallah. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sallam. With that, inshallah, I'll hand back to Khalid to see if there are any questions.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
How are you, Shaykh? MashaAllah. Sorry for
Alhamdulillah.
the technical difficulty we faced just now. As you said, Allah is teaching us to be patient. So, yeah, Alhamdulillah. So, Shaykh, the first question I received is from someone who is having COVID-19. He is a patient and he's been watching your event since last week. So he's been around in the place where they cordon off, and I would say he's already in there for 3 weeks. And now next week, is the Idul Fitri, inshallah. So he's still tested negative, and he's very sad, obviously, and very down. For our Malay community in this Nusantara, Idul Fitri is a big thing. So he's going to miss his wife and everything. So he seek for your advice and your dua.
As I said, the Eid should be there for people to celebrate their own increase. So the Eid should really be an individual. However, we share that joy with everybody around us. And in his case, he may not be able to share it with his family, but he can still, inshallah, hopefully feel the gratitude and the gratefulness. And inshallah, when he comes out a week or two later, he can do all of the things with his family that he's missed. But the most important on that day is to keep saying that, alhamdulillah wa shukrillah, alhamdulillah wa shukrillah, to be grateful. And if he's grateful, first of all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him this illness and took the illness away from him. Inshallah, he hasn't passed. I just saw a list of the number of people that have died from during these 23 days. And subhanAllah, it's enormous. Some of the awliya, that so many of them have passed away. Plus, many people have died from this illness. And the simple fact that we're still alive and that we're relatively healthy, alhamdulillah, it's something we should be continually saying alhamdulillah. So my advice would be to say lots of hamd, lots of alhamdulillah wa shukrillah, alhamdulillah wa shukrillah, and also to keep saying Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. The reason why is it's not just the song of Eid, so the puji of Eid. This is not the Eid puji. This is the what is this? This is actually saying Allah is greater than this situation I'm in. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And inshallah, that's what he should do.
Inshallah. Okay, the next question about you mentioning about people who have porn addiction, and this guy actually asked you the first time when you online, and you advise him very appropriate advice, which he tried his best. And just now you were saying about patience, going through the circumstances, and not giving up. Fall, try again. Fall, you try again, right? So he's been doing that, and he said that for the past 2 weeks he was okay. And but the problem start when the last 10 of Ramadan. So he said that, so how you do it? He feels so down because the last 10 Ramadan is the final lap, and you want it to be as good as it is to be taqwa and to attain the night of Laylatul Qadr and so on. So he seeks for your advice.
Alhamdulillah, the advice stays the same, because alhamdulillah, he's got through the first 20 days, and now slipping up in the last 10 days, is in some ways almost normal, and I'll give you the reason why. There's a saying in Arabic that that a thief doesn't enter the house. The thief doesn't enter an empty house. The thief doesn't enter an empty house. Now, the nafs, the inner desires are getting stronger. Why? Because they know that this brother, his heart is getting healthy, and they know that there's treasure in there. So what the nafs, the lower ego, the desire is trying to do is steal those things during these last 10 days and to pull him away from the good that he's achieved or that he's been blessed with. So he shouldn't worry too much about this. He shouldn't let this pull him down. What he should do is recognize, actually, this is a sign that Allah loves him, is because now it's a time that he must now intensify. And what he needs to do is that when he slips, to make sure the time between slipping and making tawbah is absolutely zero. So as soon as he makes a mistake, as soon as he slips, that he takes a ghusl and cleans himself, puts on good clothes, and then immediately says astaghfirullah, 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 or whatever way he can do to feel that he's turning back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that gap is what's going to count. If he allows that gap to go too long, then he's going to start to get depressed and going to start to get, and then it become more difficult. But if the gap is tiny, I'll mention one hadith, is that Allah has provided with two angels. It's described as being kiram katibin. They sit on each shoulder. This is not necessarily a physical thing that you can see them, but in effect they're writing down. One of them has got a higher level than the other. One you could say is the boss. One is the supervisor of the other, and he's sitting on the right. So the guy on the left, the angel on the left, he writes down, this person did something bad. He slipped up again. However, the boss who sits on the right says, wait until, in case he makes tawbah, in case he comes back. And then, if the gap is short, then what will happen is that he'll wash and he'll change and he'll make tawbah. Astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. He says, no, this is my job. I write it down. You don't write nothing down. So that slip could actually mean that he's actually getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a result of the lower self intensifying the battle. And so inshallah you need to make sure your strategies are right. And the main strategy here is cutting the time between the slip and saying astaghfirullah and just getting back on. And if that's small, inshallah you'll be fine, even if you slip more times in these 10 days. Doesn't matter, because what will happen is if the gap is short, then you'll find that you'll be purified by that great more than you would be by the slip that you're making. And Allah knows best.
Okay, Shaykh, thank you very much. Alhamdulillah, I have some technicality issues, but be patient. Shaykh, another issue is patient in regards to domestic violence. You mentioned it also, which is very essential. But the sister here said that the problem for her is that she's been to her in-law and her own mother, and they keep telling her, be patient. And she's been also trying to go to counseling and just to seek for both of them can hear the advice of the counselor. But the problem is, since both her mother and her mother-in-law saying that, no, it's okay, you just need to be patient, everything will be fine in your marriage and your husband will finally know who you really are and he still loves you. So how does this sister go about with this situation, Sheikh?
I think if we go back to what the word patience means, the definition that Imam Ghazali uses, you'll see that the mother and the mother-in-law have misunderstood what's meant by patience. ثابت باعث الدين في مقابلة الباعث الهوى is where the religious motivation overrides the desires, the desires motivation. So the desire of in this case is that we all want this marriage to be happy. The mothers want that the mother of the groom of the husband wants her husband to be happy. But these are the designs. But in the end, the religious principle should overrule those lower desires. And if he's abusive, then he's wrong. And you can't say, "Oh, it's okay. Be patient. Be patient," because patience doesn't. It's a wrong meaning. The word patience, sabr, means is where the religious principle overrides the individual's desire. And so the individual desire might be that, oh, let's just be together, live happily ever after. However, if he's wrong, he's wrong. He needs to be told that this is wrong. You cannot abuse your wife. And so she needs to get support for the religious principle, which is that men are not allowed to hit their wives. Men are not allowed to abuse their wives. And so the mother and the mother-in-law are wrong if they're condoning behavior which is haram, because this is impatience. And she's also not expected to just accept the haram. She's not expected to just say, yes, it's okay, you just I know he's being haram, I know he's doing haram, but no, this is not. She has a right. She has rights within Islam, and if those rights are not being fulfilled by the mother or the mother-in-law, then she needs to seek the support from the people that can give her that right. I don't know the situation in Singapore, but certainly in Scotland, where this has come to me, I've not had any qualms about saying, if he hits you, you can go to the police, because your right as a Muslim woman is to be protected and to be safe. And if the only way that you can be safe and protected is by going to a non-Muslim authority, one of the reason why I quote this is because in the Scottish context, most of the people here are from the Indian and Pakistani subcontinent area, and among the scholars that are most influential is a man called Shaykh Ibn Abidin, and he said that where the rights are not Muslim rights are not obtainable through a Muslim qadi, then you go to a non-Muslim qadi. If the Muslim rights are not attainable through a Muslim qadi, in other words, there isn't a qadi, there's no one there to do the job of the Muslim qadi, then you can get the same rights from a non-Muslim qadi. So in other words, if this woman the only way she can get in Scottish, I don't know enough about Singapore, but certainly in a Scottish context, if the only way that the person can get their Islamic rights is by going to a non-Muslim court, then there's nothing wrong with that, according to Ibn Abidin. And our own teacher, who is from Malaysia, Shaykh Afifi, well-known Shaykh Afifi Atiki, he said that when I put the same question to him, he said that in effect, he summarized the same thing and says that I should do what I did, which is to encourage a person to if they need to leave, even he went to the extent that the divorce which is imposed by a non-Muslim court would be valid according to Islam. So if they left their husband, went to the police, went to the court, and were divorced in this way, Shaykh Afifi said it would be Islamically valid. Ibn Abidin says it would be acceptable for them to go to get their rights elsewhere. So, this idea that sabr means just taking a beating, it's not true. It's not true.
Okay, Shaykh. Thank you, Shaykh. I think that helps a lot those who are listening to it. The next question, Shaykh, is about someone who said that they've been fitna, and the fitna is very atrocious. And sometimes people can be overzealous in attacking someone or slandering. So, how much a patient can someone endure in dealing with such matters? Does he need to confront the person, or just move away, or just keep quiet about it? Yeah.
So the person is being attacked verbally. Is this that I understand correctly?
I can hear you now.
This person is being talked about, attacked verbally.
Yeah, verbally, yeah.
Okay, so when somebody is attacking you verbally, the best way is إِذَا خَاطَبَ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا السَّلَامَ. Say, when the people of Jahiliyyah use these bad actions in the way they speak to you, the best way is to leave and say, قَالُوا السَّلَامَ, just salamu alaikum, just leave it. And the reward for that will be so great in the dunya, in this world, and in the akhirah, that you won't be able to measure it. As opposed to responding with bad words, this would fail in the dunya, in these worldly matters, and in the akhirah. The reason why I say the attacks that people make on you, in the end, you can only win by being steadfast and patient. When people speak behind your back, you get their rewards. This is because on the day of judgment they have to pay you back, and there is no way that they can pay you back except in good actions. So good actions that they did will come to you, and if they haven't got any good actions left, then any bad actions that you did will be weighed upon them. So every time they do something, they speak badly behind your back, or they speak badly to your face, you get reward for that. So you can't lose. And the second thing is, by following the sunnah of responding with kindness and walking away from this kind of verbal attacks and not getting angry, is that you show that you are the one that's following the prophetic character. And by following the prophetic character, you will be successful. So these are the ways you deal with it. In terms of when people speak behind your back, there's a very beautiful dua that I was taught, which was to recite Ya Hafiz 100 times. Ya Hafiz, Ya Hafiz, Ya Hafiz. Hafiz is the one that protects you. And then to follow with the dua, Allahumma ahfadhni fima amartana. Allahumma ahfadhni fima amartani. Oh Allah, protect me, preserve me in the things that you commanded me to do. Ahfadhni fima amartani. Wahfadhni amma nahaytani. And protect me from the things that you forbade me from. Wahfadhni fima ataytani. And protect all of the things that you've given me. Wahfadhni wahfadh kull gha'ibatan lana li bikhayr. And protect my reputation, or when people talk about me in my absence. And then what you do is you're asking Allah, oh Allah, you deal with it, you protect me. And alhamdulillah, I've had I know that this dua has worked. Is that when people have spoken, often something has come and just disturbed the fitna that they've made, this tribulation that they've made against you. And in the end, the truth will come out if you keep making this kind of dua. And if you can't remember the Arabic words, just remember the concept. We just ask him to look after your honor when people talk about you in your absence, and you'll find that in the end, it doesn't really matter what people say. It doesn't really matter in the end, it's not important. Yawm al-Qiyamah, you know what's true, and in the end, he will look after your reputation, inshallah.
Okay, thank you, Shaykh. Alhamdulillah. The next question, Shaykh, is from someone who is also critical ill. She is at the stage 3 cancer, and she watched this dars. Alhamdulillah, she's happy that she watched. Allah guide her. But the question for her is that she's thinking every time that she has this chemotherapy, she is having these death thoughts, and a lot of people will always have been telling her be patient and all that. So she also have some alternative, what we call it, treatment. But now she's asking you so every time that she has to go through that chemo, and she knows that the end is inevitable, despite that the doctor say we never know what's going to happen, but she is very relented and she leave everything to Allah, she said. So the patient, does that means that she doesn't have that patience? That's what she's asking. So
She does.
yeah, she wants to clarify with you on that.
She does, and it's very important that she's probably lucky in some ways, luckier than many of us, because she knows she's going to die. Whereas some of us, we don't know we're going to die. We pretend, we live our lives as if we're not going to die. But the truth is, every single one of us will die. Kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut. Kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut. Every soul will taste death. Now, the fact that she knows that and she's aware of that, she's in a position to start thinking about how she wants that to happen. How she wants that to happen. What would the ideal So she can almost visualize. So she has this opportunity when she goes into going into chemotherapy, into any therapy, into going into even going to sleep at night, that she has this possibility of thinking, I am going to meet my Lord. What state would I like to be in? Please, Allah, forgive me. And you have this opportunity. Now, the question of whether she's patient, she is patient. That being scared of death is not the same as not wanting to die. Let me give you an example. The Sayyidatuna Aisha, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to his wife Sayyidatuna Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, Man ahabba liqa Allah, ahabba Allah liqa'ahu. Whoever loves to meet his Lord, Allah will love to meet him. وَمَنْ كَرَأَ لِقَاءَ اللَّهِ كَرَأَ اللَّهُ لِقَاءَهُ. And whoever hates to meet his Lord, Allah hates to meet him. So Sayyidatuna Aisha says, but none of us want to die. It's natural for us to not want to die. And then the Prophet ﷺ replied, that's not what I mean. He's not referring to that natural feeling that the sister's going through, is that she's going to die. What he's referring to was that spiritual preparation of, are you ready for, do you want, is there a feeling within you accepting that you are going to die? Every single one of us is going to die. But some of us are able to accept, yeah, I'm going to die and it's going to be okay. Because Allah is kind, Allah is generous, Allah is merciful. He's always been kind to me. And I'm hoping that on that day, He's going to be kind to me too. It might be painful and I'm kind of scared of that. I'm also scared of the darkness. I'm scared of going into that grave all alone. That's the natural thing. I'm scared of the pain. I'm scared of the thirst and the hunger and all the things that are, I'm scared of the chemo. It's true. But it's not breaking down that feeling that Allah is kind. So when she goes into this state of how does she feel about death, if she can differentiate between the two elements of fear, I am scared. I really don't like chemo because chemo is really, really horrible. It's horrible to witness. I can't imagine what it's like to have. Chemo is horrible. Pain is horrible. Death ultimately is horrible. But despite all of those elements which I'm scared of and I don't want, am I on the underlying spiritual feeling? Do I recognize that Allah has been kind to me in the past? Do I anticipate that He's going to be kind to me in the future? Do I anticipate that when I die, He's going to resurrect me and put me into a place which is far better than this dump that we're living on this planet, this horrible place that we call home? You know, the place that we're going to is going to be far, and all of the people I ever loved that I've missed, my mum, my dad, the people that were cut off during this crisis, I'm going to be with all of those people. So if you have that feeling, then you are steadfast, you have sabr, even if you're scared. And that's natural. So hopefully she is patient beyond patience, inshallah. We ask Allah to give her afiyah, good state and good health, and a wonderful ending where she meets the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and where Allah brings tremendous mercy to her and reunites her with all of her loved ones.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Shaykh, for beautiful sharing. This will be the last question, I guess. You need rest and you're going to have iftar and all that. Okay, this is about a sister whose brother has been a drug addict for many years. And he has been in and out of prison for quite some time. I think 3 times, the way she wrote to me. So the mother now is 80 plus years old. The mothers feel like it's time for her to leave, and now is the sister the one that sent the question. It's like, so now I have to take care of my brother once he released from prison, and we have been patient for so long, maybe more than 30 years. So how do I deal with this patient case? Should I still treat him as a brother because they say that Siratul Rahim is very important? Or if we can't really take care of him when he is released from prison, we should just cut off ties with him. to ease our burden. We are no longer able to deal with it mentally.
Okay, she's mentioned two very important points, and she needs to understand which principle overwhelms the other in her particular circumstances. First of all, the question of silat rahim, of keeping family ties. She cannot cut family ties. She cannot ever say, he's not my brother. She can never deny that he has rights over her. He will always be her brother. He will always have rights because of the family ties. And the family ties are sacred in Islam. They are very, very high. However, how those family ties are kept can be at different levels. For example, in our own family, our family is spread in different parts of the world. And it's not possible for me, for example, to see my sister every week. They're just the simple distance. But it's possible for me to phone her every week. So this doesn't mean the concept of silat rahim is applied in the circumstances that a person is in. Then you get a situation where you have silat rahim, where you want to keep ties with your brother and sister, but the consequences of keeping the ties damages your relationship with your Lord. For example, you have a person who is I'll give you an example of a family. A family, they have young children, and they're trying their best to protect the children from all kinds of evil forces. But the uncle of the children has extremely bad habits, bad behavior, and bad, to the extent that whenever he comes into the house, he damages and abuses and hurts the children. Now here, the parents have a duty to the children and a duty to the brother. Now, to fulfill the duty to their brother, to the children, they might, in some circumstances, not allow the brother to come into the house. And it would not mean that they've cut ties with the brother. What they've done is they've protected the children. But they still need to keep the ties. If they say, you're not my brother, you can't come, they've done haram. But if they say, you can't come into my house because your presence damages my children, I will meet you outside of the house. Or please don't come to the house. I will phone you. Let's talk on the phone. Let's stay in contact by email, whatever it is. But you're not allowed to say, no, you're not my brother. I will not have any contact with you. But you can limit the contact to what is safe for you and your children. So in the case of a drug addict or recovering addict, somebody who's going through difficulties, it might be that the sister can't physically protect herself and protect him, and she doesn't have to. So in her case, I'm not saying this is what she should do or what she shouldn't, but she needs to weigh these things up and decide herself. But what she must do is she must think, how can I support him without damaging my own situation? And I will go as far as I possibly can in supporting him and helping him without physically and mentally and spiritually damaging myself and my closest loved ones. But at no point will I ever cut ties with him completely. They're the principles, and how she navigates her way through those principles will depend on her situation, and they will change. There might be times where she meets him, then there's other times where she doesn't meet him. There's times where he comes in the house. There's times where, alhamdulillah, inshallah, she'll get the answer. And they will change. There might be times when she meets him. There's other times where she doesn't meet him. There's times where he comes in the house.
Thank you very much. I think there's another question that I need to ask you because it's very important. Just came in. Sorry, Shaykh. I try to rephrase because it's a bit confusing the way she asked. But I think the ultimate point that she's trying to say in this question is that I'm not I'm not appreciating the trust that Allah is giving me. But I know I need to work out on myself, on my faith. So how do I understand that I need to be patient in enduring the difficulties that I'm going through so that I can be shukr to Allah's tribulations on me?
So how do I find So perhaps you need to repeat. I'm sorry. Apologies. I'm not quite sure I understood the question.
It's okay. What you're saying is that um the question is the sister. He was saying that he cannot find the right word is wisdom in her trial, and she is not appreciative of it. So she find that how is it that I can learn to be patient on what I go through to enhance my faith and be syukur to Allah whatever that I'm going through.
Well, I think we talked about this in the previous class about how we deal with tribulations, and it's one of the things is to see that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala has a bigger plan, and to always accept. If we take this one principle, one thing, that if you knew everything Allah knew, you would choose this situation to be as it is. Let's just say that again. That if you knew everything that Allah knew, you would choose this situation to be exactly as it is. And I gave the story the last few weeks ago about somebody who was traveling through the desert, and they lost their dog, they lost their cockerel that woke them up in the morning, and the family were really quite upset. You know, and the husband, the father just says, "Inshallah khair, this is perhaps good." And then, as they traveled with the others in their tribe, they were attacked, and the only people that survived the attack by the other tribe were them. And the reason why was because when the people came, the dogs and the cockerels, they alerted the enemy, so to speak, to where the people were, and they were saved by the fact that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala had made their dog had died, their cockerel had been stolen and mutilated by a fox. So here, the wisdom there, or the principle is that you don't know the wisdom behind this. You don't know, but you have to trust that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala does know, and because He knows, that's why He put you in this situation. If it was my choice, there wouldn't be any disease. If it was my choice, I would be in Africa at the moment. I had a ticket booked for Africa, and I would be fasting in a different situation. But Allah knows better. He decided that this is the way it's going to be. So I don't know what the wisdom is, but I know there is a wisdom. And that's the key here, is to know that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala knows better than you do. And when you accept that He knows better than you do, then you don't need to know what the wisdom is. You just need to accept, well, He does know better, whatever the wisdom is. And inshallah, the wisdom will unfold. There will be wisdom in this. And I know from the tribulations I've faced in Ramadan's past that later the wisdom was unfolded to me. It was shown to me later. But at the time, I didn't need to know what it was. I just need to know there is a wisdom. So I pray that Allah guides the sister. But my advice would be not to worry about finding the wisdom. Just accept that Allah does have a wisdom. He knows better. And if you know everything, you would choose it exactly as it is now. Inshallah.
Of all time, today is the difficult part of the technicality. I can hear you, but alhamdulillah, this is why you say patient. We are now learning to be patient. Right. So Shaykh, I think you've been with us for more than 2 months now, since the pandemic situation goes severe. And we like to thank you also, for every Sunday night from this book, subhanallah, go through every week. It's like as if we are in front of you, learning from you. And next week is already Idul Fitri on Sunday night.
Inshallah.
Maybe we can discuss about a different program, inshallah. But we really, on behalf of Sud Ilahi and all the people in Singapore, we really love you, and we are thankful that you spend your time with us and your knowledge and your wisdom. We pray that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala preserve your health, your family, so that we can continue to benefit from your guidance, your knowledge, your wisdom. Okay, we want you to make closing dua before we call it a day. Yeah, okay.
Inshallah, hopefully we will continue in some form. I don't know how, but inshallah, hopefully this connection will stay strong. Inshallah ta'ala. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا، اللهم علمنا الذي ينفعنا وزدنا علما، ونسألك اللطف والعافية والتوفيق كما في كتاب الله في سنة رسوله مع اللطف والعافية والتوفيق. اللهم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا تقبل منا إنك السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم. وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم افتح لنا بالخير واختم لنا بالخير واجعل عواقب أمورنا بالخير بيدك الخير والعافية إنك على كل شيء قدير. دعواهم فيها سبحانك اللهم وتحيتهم فيها السلام وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.
Thank you very much, Shaykh. May Allah, thank you very much, Shaykh. May Allah bless you. We see you again. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
We love you.